But I'll give you the truncated version of events and what you need to know going into the opening weekend of the NCAA tournament, which is just a few days away now. So Gonzaga is right there at the top on the one line. Baylor, Illinois, and Michigan were all the number one seeds. Now, the Zags were the number one overall seed. So they were number one overall. Gonzaga is the fifth team since Bobby Knight's Indiana Hoosiers. Hoosier Daddy, back in the 1970s, ran the table. The Bulldogs, the first wire-to-wire number one seed from Gonzaga since Kentucky back in 2015. The last two at-large teams that got in were Drake and Wichita State. So they're the last two in, and they will play Thursday, not Tuesday, but Thursday in the first four game. UCLA and Michigan State will also play. A couple of traditional powers in college basketball over the years. They will have the other play-in game. Now, the better story, though, is in the losing locker room. And even on Selection Sunday into a Monday, the better story in the losing locker room, those that were left outside of this hootenanny. And we are talking about a number of distinguished members of college basketball who are nowhere to be seen. Up and down and all around the bracket, you will not find Duke. Duke is dead. Kentucky. No bluegrass. I don't see any bluegrass from the Kentucky Wildcats. How about Arizona? The Wildcats, who have their own scandal that they're dealing with their basketball program. Louisville, not there. Indiana, the aforementioned Hoosiers, who had the last wire-to-wire unbeaten team there, last perfect season in the mid-1970s. They are not part of the 2021 field to win the championship, get to the Final Four, the whole thing. All right, so let us discuss the question. All right, as we just laid out, several of the biggest blue bloods in college basketball are not part of this tournament. How big a blow is that to the enjoyability factor of the NCAA tournament? So I've got biblical, false advertising, and three-pack. And we will line all of these things up and put them together and make some baba ganoush. Now, to lead off with, March Madness in our little world is an institution, part of the fabric, the calendar of American sport. It is an event that we did not have last season, the global shutdown, swallowing up the NCAA tournament of 2020. It was something that did not exist. Now, having it back is cool, but it's definitely not as cool without so many of the traditional superpowers of college basketball, the Blue Bloods, who have a national following. And a big part of the charm of the NCAA tournament has been really, it's a play on a biblical story, right? In the Bible, David versus Goliath. And you cannot slay the dragon if the dragon doesn't show up. And there's several dragons that are not there. And you say what you want, and Duke didn't deserve to make it, and Coach K has lost his fastball and all that, but Coach K is not walking through that door with the Duke Blue Devils. John Calipari and all those blue chip right to the NBA one-and-done guys, they're going to sit this one out with Kentucky. And even if you like the smaller schools, I hear that all the time, well, I'd rather see the smaller schools win. Even if you're on that side of the aisle, you will agree that the win over the traditional monster of college basketball has more razzmatazz to it than just medium-sized school beating small school or small school beating medium-sized school that doesn't have the following. It's better theater. You've got better theater when the beast of college basketball ends up getting eliminated in March Madness. And whether that's Duke losing in the second round to some directional school or Kentucky getting to the Sweet 16 and then taking it on the chin, but you're not going to get any of that. Instead, we have a grab bag of interlopers who have crashed the party. It's a strange season because not everyone played the same number of games because of the COVID and all that, and certain schedules all wonky. Now, furthermore, when you're filling out your bracket, you might have already done that. Maybe you'll fill out multiple brackets. Many people do. you are going to see when you fill out your bracket, which is available on foxsportsradio.com, by the way. But when you fill out your bracket, you will see the traditional regions. You'll see the West, the East, the South, and the Midwest. Now, if you didn't see the selection show and you haven't been paying attention, that is what's known as false advertising, because we're not getting a traditional NCAA tournament with 14 different venues across the country and everyone converging on one city for the Final Four. All 68 teams and 34-member traveling parties will make the pilgrimage. Some of them already have, to Indianapolis. That is the mecca of college basketball this year more so than ever. The NCAA has attempted to create a pseudo bubble, and they're not calling it a bubble because that's the NBA. That's the Mickey Mouse NBA. So instead, they're calling it a, quote, controlled environment. And from what we're being told here, there are 4 hotels, a couple of Marriott properties, I think they're all Marriott properties, and the NCAA teams will be held up there. They've got the Indiana Convention Center, over 566,000 square feet to play with there, and a connecting skywalk. So they're going to use that, and every individual who travels to the NCAA tournament getting their own hotel room. How about that? No roomies. And they have all the guidelines and all the restrictions, and all that will be in place as far as trying to track every move here. Outside of hotel workers, there will be very minimal contact between the college basketball players and coaches and everyone outside of that controlled environment of college basketball. And everyone will be tested up the wazoo daily. In fact, even the bus drivers who are driving the players around, they'll be part of this as well, being tested. So the players themselves, they will be using tracking devices. The NCAA finding the money to come up with tracking devices to keep tabs, I should say, on where all these players go. The contract tracing. So they've put that in there. And everything's in Indianapolis, so up to 25% capacity. So there will be fans at these games around the Hoosier State. There will be fans at these games. They'll be played in 6 different arenas around Indianapolis. 2 are actually not located within Indianapolis proper, but they're within 70 miles or so outside of the hub of Indianapolis. And Lucas Oil Stadium, football stadium, that was the scheduled site of the Final Four, and they will host games there leading up to the Final Four, not at the same time. Multiple courts will be used at Lucas Oil Stadium and that. So there's a lot of moving parts to this, and they'll have 12 different. My favorite part of this is the 12 different practice courts at the Indiana Convention Center. And they've also spaced out meeting rooms and all this for the teams, because usually you're just at the arena and there's only a few teams there and you can practice when you want. Well, they're going to have practices running from 9 in the morning until 10 o'clock at night, daily until the tournament is trimmed. They trim the fat from 68 down to 16 teams, which starts very fast. I mean, you see teams eliminated right and left right after the games begin. Single elimination leads to that. All right, last thing. So this is the time of the year that sports talk radio embraces college basketball. Now, normally, as an industry, outside of scandal, college basketball takes a back page. It has always been that way in the modern era. But now everyone is a card-carrying expert when it comes to college basketball. As one of my old colleagues pointed out, I am actually a real card-carrying expert as a John R. Wooden Award voter. So I actually have a card that says I'm an expert, the John R. Wooden Award. Now, March Madness, an annual rite of passage, right? When you put names in boxes and all that, and the names and the faces change, but the message remains the same. Pick winners. It's all about winning. Now, for me, I'm going to give you my handbook. The Ben Maller handbook to watching and enjoying the NCAA tournament. It's a 3-pack. It's selfish, grizzled, and ticket, right? The selfish part is my own bracket. Now, nobody cares about anyone else's bracket other than their own. It's all about how you seed the teams, right? Like, you don't care about my picks, and I don't really care about your picks, but we want to see our teams win. So the selfish part of that is, hey, let's see what we got here. All right, let's see what we got. And I've got my blindfold on and my dart board, and I'm throwing darts against the dart board to see what happens here. Now, the coaches are the grizzled part of this. From a gambling standpoint, and gambling becoming more and more popular and more acceptable and legal in so many jurisdictions around the country, but gambling really comes down to coaches. You're betting on coaches more than anything. Now, for reference, Chris Beard, he's the head coach at Texas Tech. You might remember his name from previous Texas Tech runs, but he's got a 9-3 record in the NCAA tournament. But in the first round, he has yet to lose. He's 3-0 in the first round, done very well against higher seeds, has yet to lose against as a higher seed, I should say, and has a winning record overall against lower seeds. So he's got a great record there. Tom Izzo and Michigan State taking on UCLA to begin the festivities there. Tom Izzo's team, 17-5 in the first round of the NCAA tournament. Normally a powerful Spartan team, old Sparty, but not so much this year. And so you got to factor that in a little bit. And then you got Greg McDermott and Creighton, who has a miserable record in the NCAA tournament. Past results do not guarantee future outcomes, but McDermott 3-8 in the tournament, 3-5 in the first round, and he's got a 500 record as the higher seeded team, and 0-5 as the lower seeded team. So there's all kinds of numbers, and it's paralysis by analysis. Now, the final part of the Ben Maller handbook to enjoying the NCAA tournament, we've gone through the selfish part, we've gone through the grizzled coaches part, but the final part is the ticket, as in the lottery ticket. If you're a connoisseur of the NBA and you enjoy watching the NBA, this is a chance to do some scouting, some amateur scouting. And for example, if you look at your big board there, your field of 68 teams and all that, the West, number 6 seed, USC, from the Pac-12, play the winner of the Wichita State-Drake play-in game. The Trojans feature a center by the name of Evan Mobley, who is projected as a number 3 pick, number 2, maybe even number 1 in the next NBA draft. Now, if you look at the Midwest, the number 4 seed, Oklahoma State, they play Liberty, a number 13 seed. The Cowboys on their roster this year was a guard named Cade Cunningham, who is tracking as the number 1 overall pick in the draft. And then the number 1 overall seed in the tournament, Gonzaga, they've got a 6'4" point guard, Jalen Suggs, who is also projected as a top 5 pick. And so those are 3 of the players that I'm going to be keeping an eye on here, the blue chip players who will be showcased. And it happens every year that there's some player that is a fringe player that's not thought of as a surefire, like lottery pick, and then they'll play nutso, play great, and then end up getting drafted higher than they should based on a couple of games in the tournament. People react to what they have just seen, so you have an opportunity here to put your foot forward